Here we go. Today we're talking about the Giant Trance X E Plus Advanced. I think I got that right, but if I didn't, can you blame me? So this is a brand new, sort of brand new e-bike from Giant. They've made this bike in aluminum in the past. This is the first time it's been made in carbon. It is their 140 mil rear travel, 150 front, all-purpose trail on mountain e-bike. Couple updates for this year. We've got the new sync drive motor. We're gonna get into that, but sweet. It's also got some new electronics and controllers, and it's actually pretty sleek and sexy. So let's talk about how it rides.
This bike just barely came out. It is brand spanking new. Giant's made it in aluminum for the past year or so. And here it is in carbon. Let's talk about this paint job. My goodness, this paint is, wow, it's very nice. So a couple of updates here. New motor, it's the new Giant sync drive. This bike has the Pro motor in it, a little bit more power. And one thing I'm noticing right now is most e-bikes have a pretty decent little whine. This one's fairly quiet. One thing I really like about Giant's e-bikes is the way the motor comes on and off. A lot of e-bikes get this like on-off feel. Giant's bikes do not do that. Their e-bikes are still, to this day, some of the smoothest, most natural feeling motors that I've ridden. So well done, Giant, on this motor. The climbing position on this feels really comfortable. Like I'm nice and centered on the bike. I think if this were mine, I would put a little bit shorter stem on it. For me and my fit and everything, I think the reach out to the handlebars is a hair on the big side with this 50 mil stem. I'd shorten that up a little bit, be just peachy. So a lot of new e-bikes have been moving to this little display on the top tube rather than up here on your handlebars. I think it's in an effort to make it look and feel a little bit more like your normal bike. I would imagine that's the end goal of e-bikes. It's a bike that's got a battery and a motor in it and rides and feels pretty much just like your regular mountain bike. At least for me, that's the end goal. Giant's done a really good job of making this bike real sleek and sexy. I think it's probably the cleanest looking e-bike I've ridden. The controller's tiny. Look at it over here. Right. The controller's tiny and it blends in perfectly with their grip. Looks like they've custom made these grips to kind of contour with this controller over here. And cool thing is you can run the controller on either side, right or left, real nice and tidy. I kind of forgot how bad this climb is. I don't normally come up this way because not on an e-bike, it really sucks. The geometry I think is key here, geometry and suspension design. The Geo keeps you centered over the bike enough that you're not just popping wheelies the whole climb. And the suspension design doesn't feel like it gives you quite as much traction as say the new Yeti SB160 or like the Santa Cruz stuff, the Heckler Bullet. I think those are probably a little more active and they prioritize traction over efficiency, which on an e-bike I think is key. So this one doesn't give you quite as much traction. It does feel nice and efficient though. I don't feel like I'm bobbing much at all. Great climber, big fan. I think it's the most well-balanced climbing e-bike that I've ridden. I think if I had to compare it to another e-bike, I'd say on the climbs, it feels like an Orbea Rise with more power. As far as like climbing position, efficiency, traction goes, I'd say it's a lot like that Rise. Man, it is crazy how smooth this motor is. The power delivery is, oh shoot, there we go. Sorry, chain. Whew, that was a close call. So I'm gonna give this guy an A on the climbs. Couldn't really ask for much different or better. If I were to change one tiny little thing, probably make that rear suspension a hair more active. Just get a little bit more traction. You've got the power to kind of make up for that loss in efficiency. So that's the only thing I'd change, but man, good climbing bike. All right, here we go, dropping in the downhill here. So, oh geez, this thing is like quiet. Most e-bikes sound a bit like a shopping cart rolling down a mountain, and this thing is like dead quiet. Holy cow. Wow. Like seriously impressive. Geez, that's awesome. Anyway, 60. So this is like buttery freaking smooth. Whoa. 60 5.8 on the head tube or 66.5 in the high mode. So honestly, this is the steepest bike I've ridden in quite a while, and I'm feeling that. It feels nice and like nimble and quick and zippy on the head tube, at least. I cannot get over how smooth this thing is. Like, just butter on those landings and jumps and things. It's like you never even left the ground. Wow. Oh boy. Whew. Oh, there it is. That's the peanut butter corner. I don't know why. It is always wet right there. Must be a spring or something. So let's talk a little bit more about geometry. This bike is long. The reach is long, chainstay is long. Put those two together, makes for a pretty long bike overall. You know, we're at 1300 millimeters here on a 140 mil trail bike. That's up there. Not really struggling to corner. Some of these are a little tight. I think the head tube counteracts that quite a bit, keeping you up and over the front and in a bit more maneuverable position on the bike. Oh, I want that double so bad, but it scares me so much. Wow. So, geo on this bike's pretty solid for a do-everything bike. You got a nice long stable wheelbase, kind of paired with that shorter travel. Lets you really get after it. You can also jump it up into the high mode if you'd like to make it even more nimble. I would imagine most folks are going to want this thing in low. So suspension performance right now is like blowing me away. Just how smooth, buttery, and quiet this bike rides, and actually is. Like, just sounds so quiet. There's literally no sound. I can hear a tiny bit of hub buzz, and then tires gripping dirt. Dead freaking quiet. Wow, so sick. I have to go for another lap. Too much fun. Back up top for a second lap. Let's talk a bit more about that suspension performance. I feel like I did not articulate very well what makes it so good. I was mostly just giggling and speechless because of how good it freaking felt. So let's do better this time. So off the top, the bike feels incredibly smooth. Through all the chatter, through all the bumps, it just feels buttery soft and smooth, but it doesn't stay that way the whole way through the stroke. It starts ramping up pretty quick. So when you go to pump or jump, there's something to push off of. So while it feels ultra soft off the top, it's not just gooey. And that's the perfect combo if you ask me. It really just feels how you'd kind of want your bike to feel ideally. Soft and smooth off the top, firm enough in the middle, and ramp up a bunch at the end so you don't clang through all the travel. So, carbon frame versus the alloy frame that I rode last year. It's been a long time. That last one did feel kind of heavy and cumbersome. This one might feel just a hair better. I think a little bit stiffer frame does this bike some good. Whew. This thing corners actually pretty well. I think it's that head tube angle. Next one. Woo! Did not use any landing there. Just so quiet. I can't believe this is an e-bike with how quiet it is. Oh, almost made it. Ah, that double's haunted me for a long time. It's so scary coming into it because you're goalposting those trees. Oh boy, speed. Wow. This corner will get you. Descending, I think it's up there. One of the better descending kind of all around e-bikes that I've ridden, star performer here is that suspension. I don't think this is the e-bike for ripping like downhill bike park where you self shuttle. I don't think it's quite aggressive enough for that. But for trails like this, for your everyday fun trails, I think it's the perfect e-bike. Oh, I got that one weird. Whew. All right, we're gonna head back to the garage, talk a little bit more about who this bike is for, where it shines, and if it's the right bike for you.
Couple key takeaways from the ride impressions. On the uphill, the motor was the star of the show. That thing is dead quiet and it's really, really smooth. The way it comes on and off is just really nice. It's not jerky or jarring, it's just nice. It feels really, really natural. And on the downhill, no surprise, the suspension performance was just incredible. It was my ideal suspension curve, just soft and buttery off the top, starts to ramp up in that mid-stroke and then really ramps up right at the end. It was awesome. I wish all bikes felt like that. So who is this bike for? The way I see it, there are two e-bike categories at the moment. You've got the big, burly, downhill-focused e-bikes, the ones that kind of replace a shuttle truck or a lift and you're just riding nasty, gnarly terrain all day. And then you've got the all-purpose, go-everywhere, trail all mountain style, the ones that are great for big adventure rides and for exploring all the trails that you've seen but never had the energy or motivation to go ride. The Trance X is one of those e-bikes. It's a very well-rounded trail all mountain bike. It's great for big adventure rides. Speaking of big adventure rides, I did a pretty big ride on it the other day. It was probably about 19, 20 miles, 3,000 to 3,500 vert, and I still had 2 out of 5 bars of battery left at the end of that ride. So I think this bike's gonna let you get out there. Another group of folks that I think are really going to like this bike are the people who hate loud bikes. E-bikes can be loud. They don't always sound great. This one though sounds amazing. Well, it actually doesn't sound, so that's the best part about it. This bike is dead quiet. There's really very little motor noise, and then once you're going downhill, it doesn't have that rattle that a lot of e-bikes have. There's no chain slap, there's no creaks, pops, it's just dead quiet. You hear a hub buzzing and the tires just digging into the dirt. And it's actually really cool. Another thing about this bike is in a world where e-bikes are consistently over that $10,000 mark, this one's actually a pretty decent price at $6,800. I need to double check the 6,800 thing, but I'm pretty sure that's where it is. For a bike with a carbon frame, decent to pretty good components, quality suspension, and a really solid motor, $6,800 isn't too bad, relatively speaking. Super stoked on this bike, had a great time riding it. Bonus, that paint job is pretty stellar. So, one-line bike review just to wrap up the Trance X E. It is a mind-blowing use of 140 millimeters of route travel. All right, thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next time.